and welcome to episode 15 of Off the Shelf, the half-termly library vlog. I'm Mr. Humphreys.
And I'm Miss Oliver.
And what have we got for you this episode? Well, first up, what we got for year 7 to 9 as recently arrived in the library. I'm going to start with Black Hole Cinema Club by Christopher Edge. Now, those of you who don't know Christopher Edge, he is essentially the master of the high-concept, high-wire adventure thriller. You know, thrills and spills, but in a sort of like different, unusual setting. What he does, he supplants sort of things that we know in the real world, like escape rooms, and puts them into a bigger, wider global setting. So his previous book revolved around that, the idea of escape rooms. This is more about the cinematic experience, as you could probably guess from the title. So in this story, we have a group of young characters who, essentially, they're in cinema, just on a social outing, watching a film, and then suddenly a big black tidal wave comes out of the screen, washes them away, and they're transported into almost like a black hole, really. They're sucked into a vortex, into the black hole cinema, the world of the black hole cinema. Now, it might sound at first glance, my first thought was, oh, that's a bit like Jumanji. If any of you have seen that, you know, with the board game or the computer game.
That was a great concept, wasn't it?
Absolutely, indeed. But what this one does is it's a world of multiple cinematic universes. So at one moment they're with dinosaurs, the next they're in a futuristic space station, and so they're going through very, very, very different scenarios. So it's very exciting, very thrilling in it, but it's also got a very good, likable set of characters. So it brings a nice human side to it. So you're rooting for the characters all the way through as well. So it's got an emotional heart to go with all of the exciting pyrotechnics. So there's a nice fun one to start us off with. Next up, I've got On Silver Tides by Sylvia Bishop. Now this, the reason I picked this one, if you're wondering, it's been a while since we've had a sort of new name in the world of, you know, magical realism, fantasy stories. So, you know, people like Catherine Rundell or not Emily St. John Mandel, she's not an author. Catherine Rundell or Kieran Millard Hargrave, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, we haven't had that sort of thing for a while. This author here looks like she could be the next one. So this story focuses on a family, and they're called Silvermen, and essentially they are almost like, I suppose, kind of like mermaids and mermen. They have the ability to live and breathe underwater. And they're a family, and, you know, they're living harmoniously, but then a baby is born into the family who can't breathe underwater. And so the family panics, they have to hide her, because obviously they get ostracized in that sort of community. But then they are betrayed. And as a result of being betrayed, they have to sort of escape, and they end up going on an adventure through all of the waterways of the United Kingdom to try and find safety for the new addition to their family. So it's very timely, because obviously we know all about climate change and what's going on with our rivers and our waterways perhaps not being looked after as well as they could be. So it's got the eco themes. Obviously, it's very exciting as well, because it's sort of like a sort of on-the-run adventure story, which is...
Yeah, they're kind of like refugees, really, aren't they?
Yeah, that's another reason why it's timely, actually. Yeah, think of the refugee crisis, and also, you know, they are living harmoniously, but suddenly they become this sort of other thing that other people demonize a little bit. So that's why they have to go on the run. So yeah, absolutely got that angle to it as well. And yeah, the vulnerable in our community, and of course refugees fall under that umbrella. So it's got lots of timely messages for that reason. But to return to what I was saying at the start, it's also got a real sense of wonder, you know, the magic that you can find in the seemingly mundane, and which is obviously what we would like in magical realism. And this is another edition. So this could be a name to watch in the years ahead, I think. Sylvia Bishop, she could be another one. Another big name to look. And with summer coming up, it could be the perfect summer read as well.
Yes.
Thinking about, you know, jumping into cool bodies of water to escape the heat. Could be good for that. Now, you mentioned refugees just then, and that very nicely teases up for my final choice. Choose Love by Nicola Davis and Petr Horacek. I think I'm saying that right. So, refugee crisis, very, very real thing. There's lots going on in the world that are making people having to flee their homeland, whether that's Ukraine, whether that's places in the Middle East. Lots of displacements. Now, what this collection is, a collection of poems, and you can see it's beautifully designed, beautifully created. What it encourages us to do is choose love, because, you know, there's a lot of hostile narratives around refugees at the moment, sadly, and this is just reminding us that, you know, all of these people who are fleeing, they are human beings, so it sort of humanises them and makes them realize, you know, they are just like you and me. And Anjali Q. Ralph wrote the foreword to this book. Now, those who don't know who she is, she wrote The Boy at the Back of the Class and other stories, and which incidentally that featured a refugee from Syria as its main character. So I'm just going to read a little bit of what she says. In this beautiful collection of poems, Nicola has gifted us those words sorely needed to bring truth to the fore and rehumanize those who have been dehumanized to the point of existence. Encapsulating experiences of flight, survival, confusion, and search for answers, each of her poems, coupled with the innocence of Horace's drawings, shines a light on real-time moments and histories unfolding all around us. So yeah, it's a sort of very powerful rehumanizing of the refugee experience. Yeah. So it's a very sensitively done and very moving plea, really, for empathy and tolerance in our increasingly unstable world. And it is also, of course, a reminder of how powerful poetry can be, because it is a collection of poems. So yeah, definitely one worth checking out as well. So those are my 3 recommendations. Over to you, Miss Oliver.
Okay. I will start with Bibliotherapy, The Healing Power of Reading by Bijal Shah. I chose this book because the idea of a reading cure really intrigued me. And although it may sound like a new term, bibliotherapy, it's actually been around since 1916, and the whole concept of therapeutic reading has kind of developed since the ancient Greeks. So it's not new at all.
No, it goes back to ancient times, really.
Yeah, so what is bibliotherapy exactly? Well, Shah cites books like Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale and Anne Frank's diaries as books that where we get the chance to understand how another person feels through their experience. We can use the empathic reading to understand that. And then as we connect with them, it kind of invites self-exploration within us and even catharsis as well. And one of Shah's references goes so far as to compare the relationship between the text and the reader with Freud's relationship as therapist with client. So, and I remember when I was doing my degree, my English literature degree, and there were several texts that I read, and they really resonated with me personally at the time and did feel transformative. So I kind of understand where she's going with this. So there are 3 parts to the book. So you have the first part that explains bibliotherapy and the historical development behind it. The second part is different stories from different people that she's sharing from her therapy room. And with each one there is a reading list as well, a recommended reading list.
Based on
the different concerns and anxieties that are raised.
Great.
And then the third part gives you ideas of how to make up your own reading list, but also really usefully has an A to Z of books for different concerns, like there's anger, parenting, grief, courage, and the books listed are fiction, non-fiction and poetry as well, so it spans the whole lot. So and Shah herself recommends journaling as you read a book. Something that she does, and she says it's a great way to then reflect, analyse and process your own emotions and thoughts from what you're reading. And I think there's lots of merits in doing that. Yeah. So a really, really interesting and insightful book. My second book, The Ladder by Cathy Newman. It's actually called The Ladder, Life Lessons from Women Who Scaled the Heights and Dodged the Snakes.
That's quite a dramatic subtitle.
Yeah, great title. So Cathy Newman, if you don't already know, is a journalist and Channel 4 news presenter who... this book is based on a radio show that she presents of the same name. And we're lucky enough to actually have a signed copy.
Thanks to Mrs. Rumbold. Shout out to Mrs. Rumbold there.
It says, to the girls at Surbiton High School, good luck climbing the ladder, from Cathy. So this is an insightful collection of interviews between women and Cathy who have made it to the top of the ladder in their profession, basically. So there's some really powerful, influential people, politicians like Nicola Sturgeon, scientists, activists, religious leaders, all sorts. Davina McCall's in there, Melanie Chisholm from ex-Spice Girls. So there's a whole
popular
range of
too,
women,
then.
that she's interviewed. So you can imagine the range is great. And what she does is she finds out how they got started, the challenges that they overcame, and what advice, importantly, they would give to young women also wanting to climb the same ladder. So some of the topics discussed are things like change, imposter syndrome.
We all have that.
Yes, yeah. And how not to panic in a crisis, which is very useful information.
Always.
Yeah. So, and she actually cites an incident when she herself first felt imposter syndrome when she was working for the Financial Times. And she went confidently to meet a CEO, a male CEO from a FTSE 100 company. Confidently shook his hand, and he said, "I'm sorry, there's been some mistake. I'm meant to be meeting the Financial Times." And she felt herself going bright red as she said, "I am the Financial Times."
Wow.
But she says how that really, really dented her self-esteem, that encounter. He was mortified apparently afterwards, but the damage had been done at the time.
Yeah.
So, and she's sharing her insights, as well as, suggestions and advice about how she overcame things, as the same as the other women that she interviews are.
Great.
So, yeah, really inspiring book.
Absolutely, sounds fantastic.
Yeah. My last book by Gabrielle Zevin is Elsewhere. So this was originally published in 2005 and has been republished on the back of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I recently read and really enjoyed, despite the fact I'm not into gaming at all. So I'm really interested to see if this is as good a read, having been written so much earlier. The plot in this is unusual. So the blurb tells us on the back that it's about Liz, who died in a car accident when she was 15. So it starts with death, unusually. And she finds herself in a place called Elsewhere. And in Elsewhere, everything's pretty much the same as it is on Earth, except that everybody gets younger until eventually they are reborn as a baby again. But Liz wants to turn 16. She wants to do all those rites of passage things that 16-year-olds want to do, go to college, learn to drive a car. So the question is life lived in reverse any different to a life lived forward, really? So you need to read this to find out. And she makes new relationships, she reforms old ones. So this is definitely a novel of hope, redemption, and literal rebirth.
Okay. And if it's, obviously, I think Tomorrow, that was sort of global phenomenon. So,
Yes.
be interesting. Yeah, as you said, because she has got others in her back catalogue, but they've chosen this one from 2005. So there's got to be a reason for that. This has got to be. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see how this one takes off then. Well, thank you very much, Miss Oliver. Okay, so up next, it is time for our special guest. Now we have got a member of the English department this episode. We've got Mr. Sayer. Mr. Sayer is a very well-read man, and he's a friend of the library. So I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Sayer now, who's going to talk to you about his reading likes, dislikes, habits, and foibles. Over to you, Mr. Sayer.
Recently I read The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. It was recommended to me by one of my Year 10 tutees who's really into fantasy novels. It was great, really easy read. I got through it in about a week over the Christmas holidays. It was all about this female protagonist who joins a really brutal war college with the aim of becoming a dragon rider and staying alive. And it's great, lots of dragons and love and fierce rivalries. I would say it's definitely got some Hunger Games vibes to it, but I would suggest probably for a slightly older reader. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Well, it's hard to remember because it was so long ago, but I really liked the Terry Pratchett books, the Discworld novels. The first ones were The Colour of Magic and The Light Fantastic that I remember, and I must have read about 10 more after that. They're really funny. They got this great world, which is it's called the Discworld. It is, as the name might suggest, a flat circular world that sits, I think it's on the back of 4 elephants who in turn stand on the back of a giant turtle. So it's fun, and the more you read, the more sort of internal jokes I guess you get. You start getting lots of cross references, and it's a really interesting and really funny world, so I really enjoyed those. I really like Michael Connolly, who writes about a police detective called Hieronymus Bosch, and there's a TV series as well on Amazon that goes with that. I read about 10 of those, although I would actually say the ones that I would really go for is guy called John Feinstein. I really like sports books, and I like American sports, and I think this guy's got the greatest job there is. He's a writer who basically spends a season within a team, basically, and charts their season and their history, and you get to know all the players and the sort of inside story of what goes on in the dressing room. I absolutely love those books. He's written about baseball and American football, and he's really good on golf. So the one I would recommend probably for him is A Good Walk Spoiled, which is about professional golf. And there's another one called Tales from the Q School, which is great. It's all about the lesser-known golfers going through qualifying school and sleeping in their caravans in the car park and missing a putt that, you know, would be able to pay for their children's education, and so it's fascinating. So I think, yeah, John Feinstein's a one I would always go for. The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. Although I know that Mrs. Bowden, it's one of her favourites as well. It's all about, it's set in 1939, and it's about, I may have to read from the sheet a little bit on this one, but it's about two characters who come together, one who escapes from Prague and gets himself to New York. He's an amazing illustrator, and he and his cousin meet, and they create a comic together that is called The Escapist, and its superhero is a Nazi-busting saviour who liberates the oppressed world. And so they make their fortune through this comic called The Escapist, but then the undercurrent is that he wants to be the real world Nazi-busting superhero and get his family out of the tyranny, away from the tyranny of Hitler. So it's amazing. It's very hard to describe because it's all sorts of things, but it's incredible. Highly recommend. Well, I've gone for big meaty books that will keep me company. The Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien, definitely one of my favourites growing up. Even though I remember the language being quite hard to get into, it wasn't a problem for some reason. I think I must have been 12 or something and I read it. I would recommend it to anyone. It really engaged me. I love The Hobbit as well, but I've gone for The Lord of the Rings because it's bigger, frankly, would take up more days on a desert island. I'd definitely go for Earthsea, the Earthsea Quartet by Ursula K. Le Guin. There's a bit of a theme in that. Yeah, that one's, I would say, possibly, well, Mrs. Huntley might hate me for this, but a more grown-up version of Harry Potter. I don't know, but it's definitely got a lot of magic. It's got dragons. I think it's brilliant. It's got some fantastic female protagonists. So I'd go for the Earthsea Quartet if you can squash it all together in one book, which you can. So again, that would keep me busy. And then if you'll allow it, I would like an audiobook as my third one. And that would be The Pickwick Papers by Charles Dickens, read by Rory Kinnear. Number one, because I love Rory Kinnear. Secondly, because it's 37 hours long on the audiobook. It's on Audible. I'm about 18 hours into it, and I've been going about 5 years. So, it's got some legs. There's 49 characters, I think, and he does each of the different voices. It's only him narrating it. And it's his first book that he wrote, Dickens, I think, or published, and it just staggers me how funny Dickens is. I'm not sure how many people know just how funny he is. I think it's hilarious. And there's lots and lots of little stories within it with loads and loads of different characters. So I'd like the audiobook of that, please, as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sayer. As always, getting Rory Kinnear in there always finds a way to get his friend Rory Kinnear in anything he talks about. Okay, so next up we got our pupil librarians, and two of your 7 pupil librarians have put together this little thing to tell you a bit more about the Spark Book Awards. Over to them.
to our pupil librarians. Okay, and now we have a bit of trivia for you. So Sherlock Holmes never actually said the famous phrase, "Elementary, my dear Watson." Supposedly it was said by Sherlock Holmes to Dr. Watson, although the remark is not found in any of Conan Doyle's stories. The nearest thing to it is an exchange in the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes in 1894, where he said, "Excellent," I said, "elementary." The misquotation, apparently, "Elementary, my dear Watson," is first recorded in P.G. Wodehouse of Jeeves and Wooster fame in 1915.
Okay,
So
yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, those are not two things you normally put together, Sherlock
No,
Holmes and Jeeves and
P.G.
Wooster.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, thank you very much. Okay, so that wraps up this episode. This is our last episode of the academic year. So this summer, make sure you do lots of reading.
Definitely.
Keep reading. And we will see you next year. Until then, take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.